Good morning and good evening to the audience and our speakers for the second Transatlantic AI Exchange web session. Today's June 22nd, 2021. I'm Thomas Neubert, born and raised in Germany, a longtime entrepreneur living in Silicon Valley for over 30 years. And I'm working at Intel's headquarters in Santa Clara around topics related to artificial intelligence and the data center of the future. Now, we are again super excited bringing together the high-tech experts and connect them with the up-and-coming German AI ecosystem. Allow me to provide a quick overview of this Transatlantic AI Exchange initiative if you have not attended the first session a few weeks ago. The federal government in Germany published and updated a paper in 2018 and 2020 respectively called the Artificial Intelligence Strategy of the German federal government. The paper coined the terms AI made in Germany and expanded to AI made in Europe. The content of this paper sparked the idea to invite experts to share our expertise, connect people, analyze AI, use cases, but most important, transfer a sense of culture to accelerate the go-to-market and commercialization of AI solutions. Now, upcoming events starting again in early September after the summer season, after the summer vacation, will tackle issues like healthcare, challenges of AI scaling in corporations, ethical and trust issues around AI usages, AI and autonomous driving, and others. Our website will be updated accordingly. At the moment, it is not up to date. If anyone has AI-related topics of any sort, please reach out to us and we will consider building them into the program. Also, this initiative is built around you all, and we would like to hear your feedback to adjust and adapt. So please take a moment to fill out the survey at the end of the session based on the link we will provide in the chat window shortly. At the end of the 60-minute session, we will provide a new Zoom link in the chat channel to open up a networking opportunity for all people who are interested afterwards. Lastly, a big, huge thank you to our founding members, Petra and Ragnar, for AI Hamburg, who joined me on this journey very early on. And of course, our partners, the German American Business Association, in short, GABA, here in Silicon Valley, the German Research Center of Artificial Intelligence, in German DFKI, the German Consulate in San Francisco, of course, and the German Association of AI Companies, or in German called the KI Bundesverband. We couldn't do it without our sponsors. So therefore, I'd like to thank our platinum sponsor, Taylor Wessing, and our gold sponsor, the German Consulate in San Francisco. So let's get to it. I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Ragnar Kruse, a successful serial entrepreneur whom I have the pleasure of knowing actually for over 20 years. Ragnar is co-founder of the AI Fund, AI Hamburg, AI Invest, and AI for Germany. Previously, he was the co-founder and CEO of Smatu. From 2005 to 2019, he led the company to become the leading independent global real-time mobile advertising platform, serving more than 300 billion ads to over 1 billion unique mobile users worldwide every month. As a serial entrepreneur with over 30 years of IT experience, Ragnar understands the unique challenges of bringing new technologies to market and scaling companies internationally. In the US, as well as in Europe, he built up several companies from startup to market launch and IPO. With the AI Fund, he plans to use this expertise to grow and scale European AI startups. So allow me a few words about AI Hamburg. AI Hamburg is a not-for-profit initiative founded by the AI Fund and the Smatu founders Petra Vorsteher and Ragnar, and launched in 2019 together with QTech Innovation, the Technical University of Hamburg, Hamburg Invest, the Excellence Cluster Hamburg at Work, and other Hamburg universities and partners. It has a global network of advisors and AI experts who provide the knowledge and expertise from various industries and research institutions. The goal is to accelerate the adoption of artificial intelligence in companies and startups, to promote education and training, and to establish a leading transatlantic ecosystem for the application of AI. AI Hamburg is also a founding member of the umbrella initiative AI for Germany, and of course, as well, the Transatlantic AI Exchange, and is deeply rooted in the German AI ecosystem and in the US, especially in Silicon Valley. So with that, Ragnar, I would like to hand it over to you. Before we start, Oliver, if you can please share the link to the questionnaire in the chat, and maybe even the Zoom link for the networking sessions afterwards. So with that, Ragnar, please go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, Thomas. Thank you much for the long introduction. And I look forward to our session with our 5 panelists today. Very happy to have actually such a great talent here with me at the panel. And I can promise every one of you who have some interesting facts and insights into AI investing for sure in the US, but also in Germany, and probably some really good recommendation for AI startups, what to do, how to grow their business, and how to get it funded. Yeah, we have some great VCs here on the table who will be able to give you some advice, and I look forward to our session. We will start with a little introduction. I ask everyone actually to introduce themselves and give a little overview so that you in the audience get an idea who is all here and who will be talking to you. So therefore, I would like to ask first Yvonne Lutsch from Bosch Ventures to introduce herself, please.
Thank you very much, Ragnar. So thanks for having me here. So my name is Yvonne Lutsch. I am, I think, a very, very good example of cross collaboration between Europe, especially Germany and US. So I'm born and raised in Germany, but I live in US for a little bit more than 5 years now. I have been with Bosch my entire career, almost 19 years now. And to the Germans, actually, I don't have to explain what the Bosch Corporation is. Some US people, I sometimes remind them about Bosch with mentioning our super silent dishwashers. So yeah, as I said, I have been with Bosch my entire career, 5.5 in the Silicon Valley and in the Bosch investment group for a little bit over 3 years now. And our investment group is called Robert Bosch Venture Capital. And since it's too long, we also say RBVC. Not everyone knows that actually Bosch has its own dedicated investment group. But actually we are around for more than 13 years already. We have invested in more than 70 companies in total, and we have round about 50 companies in our active portfolio. We are having round about $700 million asset under management. We are fund structured like an institutional VC. And we are currently raising our next fund. That's very likely a $300 million fund. Although we have only one limited partner, and that's the Bosch Corporation. We are a worldwide team. We are around about 20 investors in US. We are 4 people, and we are responsible for deals in North America. That also includes Canada. We have people in Germany for the European ecosystem. We have a team in Israel, and we have a team in China, Shanghai, for investments in China. Generally, we are stage agnostic, but our sweet spot is rather Series A and B investments, For a corporate VC, rather early. Think about an average ticket size of maybe 5 million US dollars. Can be a little bit more, can be a little bit less. And as any other institutional VC, we keep reserves for follow-on investments since we are rather financially incentivized. That means we stay with our portfolio companies through thick and thin, even though if Bosch might change their strategy. As broad and as large as the Bosch Corporation is, as broad are our focus areas. You know that Bosch has many different business sectors, mobility, industrial, consumer tech. And in all these areas, we look into really core tech startups and solutions. For example, automation of any kind of, including robot process automation or automation with the help of robotics. We look into next generation computing, including quantum computing. Of course, AI and deep learning is on our focus, 5G and edge computing. Again, semiconductors are particularly hot in China, but also in US. Semiconductor startups are gaining more and more traction. Open source software platforms, in particular enterprise SaaS, are interesting to us. Even construction technology, construction tech is interesting because this is an area where disruption is currently actually happening, and digitalization. As well as a little bit healthcare. It's a smaller area, but we're also looking in healthcare, and particularly in home diagnostics, remote care, and genomics. In terms of AI, I really went through our portfolio and I saw that we invested in probably 10 companies where AI is the top focus. I think that many of our startups use AI or machine learning in one or the other form, but these 10 companies in particular, they would not exist without machine learning, without AI. And to mention some, AI Motive in Europe, Foghorn Systems in US, Allegro AI in Israel, Sentient, Recognize, GraphCore, XMOS, all kind of AI chips, hardware companies, as well as 2 autonomous driving startups in China called UIC and TrunkTech. So there is a broad interest in AI, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne. And always I have in my ears the quote from your CEO from Bosch, which is a 400,000 employee organization. Every product will have AI in it or will be done through AI at Bosch. Yeah, and I think this was predicted for 2025. Yeah, so that's a bold statement. That is what I like. So thank you, Yvonne. And now I would like Samir Kumar from M12, which is the venture arm of Microsoft, to introduce himself. Samir.
Hi, Ragnar. Thank you. And it's good to be with all of you this morning. So I'm Samir Kumar, Managing Director and General Manager in M12, which is, as you mentioned, Microsoft's early stage venture arm. If you're wondering what the M and the 12 represent, M is for Microsoft, and there are 12 letters in the word entrepreneur. So Microsoft supporting entrepreneurs, that's what's the name. It's not a clandestine intelligence agency or a spy organization, but we're cool like all the other VCs that have alphanumeric names these days. So M12 is only 5 years old. We actually just celebrated our 5-year anniversary. And I've been in M12 for 4.5 out of those 5 years. So I consider myself a veteran of the team. Prior to that, I've been a product management and business development leader for my entire career. And so in M12, I lead all of our kind of, and I shouldn't say lead all of our investments, but guide and steward our investments in all things AI, whether it's vertical or horizontal, all things related to robotics, logistics, automation, autonomous driving, anything related to transportation, semiconductor, including things like quantum computing. So basically all things that you would call frontier tech or deep tech. The core of M12, though, is enterprise SaaS. That is probably 70% of the investments that we make. So we are a software-centric investor. Anytime if we're doing hardware or even if we're doing semiconductor, when we think about software as a point of leverage, that's where we think we can help and add value. Similar to Bosch, we are independent, financially driven. We're not a strategic investor. We are founder friendly, so no ROFRs, no ROFNs, no strategic information rights. So we look and act like an institutional financial investor. We don't disclose our fund size, but just to give you kind of a sense of, the size and scale of our fund, coming up on just past 5 years, about 1.1 billion under management. Our check sizes range from 1 million on the low end to 20 million on the high end. We tend to gravitate towards leading Series A and Series B deals. We do dip our toes and do pre-A rounds. And of course, from time to time, we'll go later stage into Series C and Series D. That's a little bit more rare for us as a point of entry, but we certainly follow on into our portfolio companies in later stage rounds. If you think about AI as an investment focus, I mean, to quote Andrew Ng, AI is like electricity, it's everywhere. So whether you're thinking vertically or horizontally, it is a huge portion of our portfolio. The vast majority are in the vertical or applied AI bucket. I would say of the 87 active portfolio companies we currently have, and if I look at the portfolio, I would say probably close to half have a strong AI component, where AI is a key differentiator or a point of leverage for why our portfolio company thinks that they are going to be able to win the market they're going after. Geographically speaking, our center of gravity is in San Francisco. SAM12 headquarters is actually in the Twitter building in San Francisco. But we have our investment team of 10 spread out through San Francisco, Seattle, London, Tel Aviv, and Bangalore. And so we focus on North America, we focus on UK, EU, Israel, India, and occasionally we do also kind of extend our reach into Southeast Asia. And we do have now, I think, 3 portfolio companies that were created in Australia. So we are active in Germany, and I'd love to tell you guys more about that, and the EU, and we're always looking to do more deals there. And as we look at our portfolio in Germany, AI is, kind of a core tenet of all of our investments in Germany to date. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell. As I said, check size 1 to 20 million. Typical check size is now trending towards 7 to 10 million, and leading, typically leading Series A, Series B deals. We have an ownership target of 10% that we like to aim for. Certainly happy to get more, but say 8% is a hard floor, but ideal target is about 10%. So yeah, that's M12 in a nutshell.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Samir. Then I would like to come to our next panelist, Rashmi Gopinath from B Capital. Welcome.
Thanks, Ragnar. And hello, everyone. Really excited to speak about this topic with the great panel here. I'm Rashmi Gopinath. I'm a general partner at B Capital Group. We're a multi-stage global venture fund. We have an early stage practice that typically leads seed and Series A stage investments. I'm on the growth team, and our focus is primarily Series B all the way up until pre-IPO rounds. We're currently at a 2 billion AUM. The current fund size that we're deploying out of is a $1.3 billion fund. Typical check sizes range from about 15 to 20 on the smaller side to 80 to 100 on the larger side. We look to lead rounds and co-lead rounds. The focus is primarily across enterprise software, and within enterprise software, we take a fairly broad perspective across cloud infrastructure, cybersecurity, DevOps and open source, AI/ML, and enterprise SaaS. We also look at certain verticals like healthcare, fintech, industrials and transportation, retail and e-commerce and such. The fund is global, so about 30-35% of our team is based out of Asia, between China, Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, and India. And the rest of the team is primarily based out of the US, between San Francisco, LA, and New York. The US team leads a lot of our investments in Europe as well. We have 3 portfolio companies in EU today. We share AI Motive with Bosch Ventures, and we also have an investment in another AI-enabled consumer play, a company called Fishbrain that's based out of Stockholm. AI has kind of been I would say, one of the underlying pinnings of a lot of our enterprise investments. We currently have over 10 investments across both the AI infrastructure startups as well as AI-enabled application startups. My quick background, I've been at the fund for about 1.5 years, based out of our San Francisco office. Prior to that, worked with Samir at M12. And prior to that was at Intel Capital. So I've been on the investment side for about close to 10 years now. And then spent a few years on the operating side, both with large companies as well as with startups. Started off my career at Oracle and GE, building enterprise software products primarily across DevOps, database, analytics, and machine learning. And then spent a few years on the startup operating side in go-to-market roles with a company called Blue Data, which is in the cloud infrastructure space, and with Couchbase, which is in the NoSQL database space. Really excited to be here and look forward to the discussion today.
Thanks, Rashmi, for the introduction. Quite significant so far what you've been doing. Next one I would like to introduce you is Sirak Röding, and actually I will take the word here. Sirak is a German serial entrepreneur living in the US, and he's also an investor. And actually I looked up your Wikipedia entry, which is quite comprehensive. Yeah, someone might share the link there. As an entrepreneur with multiple exits, one was a 250 million exit at Shopkick, yeah, and you were just named Global Innovator in 2021 by the World Economic Forum, yeah, and already in 2013 Tech Pioneer, yeah. So very interesting, and you're again an entrepreneur in, I think, 1 or 2 companies, but you also are an investor, and you focus on consumer business, biology meets software and engineering, brain to machine interface, and of course, AI and consumer robotics. And interestingly for me also to learn is you're also a limited partner in several venture capital funds, including Andreessen Horowitz, Founders Fund, Bond, Greylock, KPCB, IFB, and Chen Fund in China, yeah, and a few more. So gives also great insights here as a limited partner into funds, so you can see kind of both sides. Very interesting. And Sirak, would you like to add something to that? You're on mute just now.
That was already quite comprehensive, Ragnar. Thank you. I will just the only thing I will add is, so I'm an entrepreneur. I like to build things, and I look at opportunities through the lens of can it really grow massively, and what does it take to make it happen? Because usually I'm in the trenches with dirt under my fingernails to try to build things.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and happy to have you here on our panel. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me introduce you to the next one, which is Mark Maloney, who we know here from the State Department, but who also has been in investment banking for quite some time, and quite an interesting background traveling the world. So, Mark, would you mind introducing yourself?
Thank you, Ragnar, and thank you for inviting me today. Yes, I am an economic officer at the Department of State, and I'm stationed in Hamburg at Consulate Hamburg. We view Hamburg as a very important linchpin in Germany's energy Wende and in gaming space, as well as AI. And frankly, AI, dynamics of AI are so impressive that we pay a lot of attention to the topic from the economic policy side. Is this a time where I should give some details about the top-down nature of the AI market, Ragnar?
As you are the last one I have introduced, it's probably a good idea to already come into the kind of topics. I asked Mark to give a little bit an overview of the AI market from different perspectives. So therefore, yes, Mark, please, if you could, would you mind providing us with some data about the AI market?
Sure. And as I said, we at the State Department and Commerce, we pay a lot of attention to the AI market because according to many reports, including one from PwC, by the year 2030, AI will add 14% to the global GDP. That's basically the size of China's current GDP, about $16 trillion. So those who excel in that are going to be the performers of tomorrow, as you all know. Of that $16 trillion of excess contribution, excess economic contribution, almost half is going to be from productivity and automation improvements, and the other half is going to be based on a consumption effect as product quality improves, product targeting improves. At this point, I was going to talk about sectors, but since all the fund manager sides have given you a very good look at the sectors that they're talking about, I'll just say that the one that I know best is financial services. That wasn't so obvious in those in the presentations I heard before, but to be honest, the revolution is going to the tide is going to raise all boats in this revolution, including all the way down to agriculture, and even government is looking at improving their own performance through AI. So I'll give you a couple more metrics. Just in 2019, the total investment in AI globally was about $30 billion. It exceeded $30 billion, of which 24 billion was in the US and China. So the US and China are obviously the big boys in that game. A study by the European Investment Bank's advisory services identify an annual investment gap here in the EU of between 5 and 10 billion dollars or 5 and 10 billion euros, excuse me, for AI and blockchain startups here in Europe. So in addition to that, the companies that are achieving financing here in Europe are more along the development stage rather than the growth stage, whereas companies in USA and China, where the markets are a little more mature and the infrastructure is a little more developed, are along towards Series C and more growth stage. So these dynamics, they play a role in that. We see reports that European AI companies are undervalued compared to American competitors by 30%, a 30% discount in A-round financing. Another fact that speaks to that is that in Germany, the per capita investment into AI startups is a total of $4 US. And you compare that to the USA, where it's $57 US. That's a large gap right there. And in Israel, which is smaller, but obviously a very important AI market, it's $119 per capita. So there is significant upside for those who are looking for talent. Europe has 43,000 AI researchers. That includes 8,000 in the UK, but we'll leave them in that number for now. The USA only has 29,000. So, the market size and funding levels, I mean, I didn't give you the full market size. The GDP for the US portion of that GDP growth will be about $3.5 to $4 trillion nominal. And in Europe, it's $2.5 trillion nominal. So the market size is not small. Funding level is a little less developed, but these dynamics suggest there's opportunity in Europe, and especially for Germany, in AI and blockchain and in energy companies and so on. I'll turn it over to my colleagues and the other panelists to talk about their challenges individually and collectively. But again, thank you, Ragnar, for inviting us. The U.S. government is very involved and very interested in AI as a commercial endeavor. Thank you.
Yeah, Mark, thank you very much. We see it's a huge market. There's a big difference between US and Europe when it comes to VC investment. Yeah, still there's a lot of talent. Yeah, so let's come to VC investments in AI. Yeah, and so some of you already in my panel have already mentioned. Yeah, have you invested in German or EU AI companies? And how many do you have in your portfolio to give an idea? And maybe even if you have the comparison to the US. Yeah. Samir, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure, happy to do so. So currently, if I look at just Germany, we have 3 active portfolio companies in Germany, and all 3 have a very strong AI component. So 20BN, which is doing computer vision and video understanding, Wandelbots, which is looking to democratize, how do you program industrial robotics and with an AI component, Comtravo, which is looking to reinvent business travel for small and medium businesses using natural language processing and AI. Now, more broadly in the EU, we have another 4 investments, and 2 of those have a very strong AI component. One is not yet public, but Unbabel, which is based in Portugal, which is doing language translation for vertical applications in B2B. And then hopefully in a little while, I'll be able to tell you about the other one. But altogether, 4 investments in the EU, in addition to 3 in Germany. And then we're also very active in the UK. So we have 6 portfolio companies in the UK. And out of those, 2 have a strong AI component in thinking about, things like synthetic data or AI for HR applications. So yeah, and we are active in the EU, UK, and always looking to do more in Germany. So one of the hopes here is that this is a great way to connect with the ecosystem and for us to get more deal flow for early stage deals in Germany.
Yeah, thank you. Yvonne, I know you're in the Valley, but you probably also have kind of an overview how many AI companies and how that is kind of divided.
Yeah, I really had to count, and I came up with at least 4 companies in Europe where we invested, and these are, amongst this group of the companies where I think that AI is essential for the companies to be successful. One of them is AI Motive, where we actually have a common investment with B Capital. So they enable autonomous driving. The company is actually technically founded in Germany, but the team is the majority of the team is actually located in Hungary. There's a company called Teralytics, analyzing telecommunications data to trace groups of people and movement of people, of course, completely anonymous. They are based in Switzerland. And then we have Graphcore and Exmos, 2 companies with a strong hardware focus to enable AI and to help machine learning to get accelerated. And both of these companies are actually in UK. So that were the companies I came across quickly. So yeah, of course, there are also good players in Europe, not only in US.
Yeah. Now my question to Rashmi, same question, investments in AI in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Europe, we have 3 companies today. AI Motive that Yvonne described. We have another company in the social networking commerce space that uses a lot of machine learning called Fishbrain, based out of Sweden. And then we have a company called Machine Max in UK, which provides a machine learning based IoT platform for managing equipments for off-highway fleets. We also have a number of US-based companies that have international operations in EU, like DataRobot and Labelbox, that provide the AI infrastructure software platforms. And then we have a number of AI-enabled application software companies like Clary, which is in the revenue forecasting space that brings in data from a number of enterprise sales and marketing customer success platforms to help predict what the top line revenue growth for the company would be and the next best actions for the sales teams and the customer success teams to do. We have a cyber company called Synac that leverages machine learning based on, again, a crowdsourced intelligence that they have with a vetted set of researchers that they work with to help predict vulnerabilities in critical applications for large enterprises. We have Hypersonics that's used for predicting pricing, packaging, inventory management, logistics, for anything that's commerce related, so selling into retail, financial services, manufacturing. So I'd say collectively from a portfolio standpoint, we have north of 10 companies that are in the core AI infrastructure space or applications that heavily leverage AI from an application standpoint.
Very interesting. Thank you. Then how do you find them, or do they find you? And do you do active sourcing, or how do you connect with them?
Yeah, happy to share our perspective. So we're very thesis driven on the growth stage. And so a lot of our investments stem out of the investment thesis work or the sector analysis work that we do in specific spaces. For example, we have two companies in the healthcare AI space. One is a company called Atomwise, which is in the drug discovery space. And we have another called Evidation Health, which is in the clinical trial space. And those were based on the thesis work that we had done across those sectors. Similarly, Hypersonics was one that was based out of the thesis work that we had done in predictive analytics and recommendation engines for enterprise companies. So our analysis and our find in the investment space is primarily based on the work that we do, and we go fairly deep in identifying the markets that we want to invest in and which companies would fall into the criteria that meets the growth stage criteria.
Yeah. Samir, how do you source AI companies? How do you find them, or what's your process there?
Yeah, so I don't think my process is going to be too dissimilar to what you hear from others. I mean, I think there's a large overlap in whether it's an AI company or any other software SaaS company in terms of how we would source. It's a combination of your individual networks, entrepreneurs reaching out that believe that Microsoft as the value add platform behind M12 is something that they're actively seeking out. Maybe the one thing I will call out is I like to hang out at the leading academic AI conferences like MURIPS and ICLR. And so there's always kind of the serendipitous moment where you meet that very strong academic with the entrepreneurial spark, and they tell you about this new company that they're founding. I'd like to do more of that. It's certainly harder to do during the pandemic, where even those conferences are remote. So maybe that's the one more AI-centric way of sourcing deals. But I think word of mouth, network, deal flow from other VCs, and then certainly hitting the streets and pounding the pavement to directly connect with entrepreneurs. And for me, doing that with the academic community through those leading academic conferences is one of the ones I'd like to do more of.
Yvonne, you want to add to something? Do you have a secret sauce to find the right companies?
Yes, to be honest, we are not sourcing AI startups differently than any other startups we are sourcing. It's a lot the network, it's a lot talking to entrepreneurs and other investors. And I mean, especially in Germany and in Europe, not only Bosch, but also RBVC has a very good brand recognition. So there's also a lot of inbound outreach to us. In US, it's actually less because the Bosch brand and also RWC is not that known as in Europe, but we're working on it. So there is also some inbound interest, but most of it is actually through our network.
Yeah. Let's come to, I think, one of the most interesting questions. That is, what are your main investment criteria specifically to AI companies? And I would like with Samir to take that question.
Yeah, so I think there's, this thinking has evolved a little bit in terms of if you think about where we are and whether you call it maturity or hype cycle of AI. If I were to rewind the clock back to like 2014, there was a time and place for VCs looking for who's going to be the next DeepMind or who's going to be the next Vicarious. I don't want to say think tanks, but really truly horizontal, AI experts innovating in the field of AI to move the state of the art forward. And we'll think about use cases and applications afterwards. And I think where we are today is that the world is really shifting towards, I don't want to say exclusively, but overwhelming focus on vertical AI. It doesn't mean that we'll never see a great horizontal AI startup emerge that is a candidate for VC investment, but the bar has certainly shifted to even being higher than it was back then. And so as I think as you think about vertical AI, you increasingly think about them like you would any other startup, like you would the metrics you would apply to any other SaaS startup. Maybe the uniqueness is thinking about, all right, what about this company or this team makes them credible from an AI perspective? Is it the academic credentials? Is it a very disciplined approach to ML ops? Is it the ability to combine domain expertise along with AI expertise and apply it with some unique angle to a particular industry or vertical problem? Thinking about data moats and data flywheels still continues to be a key consideration. Is the company in a position to build a data advantage in such a way that if you think about the well-funded tech giants, including Microsoft, would not just automatically go after that market and try to commoditize it. So that's another key consideration. But increasingly it's about, where do you really see the ability to build a business and do so efficiently so that you can realize the value of AI and it's not just AI for the sake of AI. But I think like everything else, it comes back to the team and the founders, and if I were to maybe put a little bit of a lens on looking at my experience in Germany and in the EU, you see very strong technical founders with great academic roots. And certainly the best ones demonstrate a level of self-awareness around where would they like to complement their team that is a skill set that they don't have, but they're very well aware of it and understand what it's going to take to recruit the right, chief business officer, chief product officer, chief operating officer, CRO, to complement their technical skill set. We also see a lot of first-time founders, and certainly the same advice, whether in the US or in the EU, in terms of the level of self-awareness of how you build out your leadership team can really make or break when you're dealing with first-time founders, whether AI startups or other areas. I think certainly kind of the size and scale of the aspiration, there are some differences there between what we see in Germany and the EU more broadly than what we're seeing, at least here in Silicon Valley, and we can talk more about that. But yeah, those are my general parameters. It's increasingly about vertical AI. Demonstrate to me, show me the proof points around domain knowledge, plus competency around AI, and the ability to build a differentiated moat that you'd be able to, show you can sustainably build a business and not get commoditized. One of the big challenges with AI, of course, is algorithms are cheap. They get open source, whether it's coming from academia or coming from the large industrial labs. And so where we see value accumulating is, you've got a data flywheel or you've got a data moat. And then certainly there's another class of companies that are able to realize value in hardware or semiconductor. So if you're a semiconductor startup building a new kind of new piece of AI silicon, clearly that's value that you can realize. There's a lot happening in the semiconductor space. And on the other side are those that have figured out how to build a data flywheel. And then algorithms could be off the shelf, could be open source, maybe they're built in-house, but you can't bank on algorithms as the thing that you're going to be able to build a moat around.
Yeah. So asking Yvonne and Rashmi, do you want to add something to that question main criteria on AI companies? What are you looking for?
I would say similar to what Samir said, team definitely is quite important. I think the contextual or the data advantage that the companies have is quite relevant as well. And this is where the application-focused AI companies can create a unique differentiation for themselves. If we look at Atomwise in the drug discovery space or Innovator in the broader digital healthcare adoption space, I think the value that they bring in building models that are very specific or contextual to that use case gives them a unique differentiation, which is not something that a Microsoft or a Google or an Amazon can easily replicate, given that it takes years of industry and domain expertise to build that, that competitive moat for themselves. I think the other one, as we start getting into more of the growth stages, I would say that the growth investors are a little less forgiving on just pure tech. And this is where execution towards the numbers becomes important. I know we talked about like what are some of the metrics that we look at. And while based on the industry and the specific sector, the metrics can be different, but I would say the two that matter the most are going to be the year-over-year growth as well as the gross margins, and figuring out how companies, as they're looking to scale and grow, can be focused on driving that top line growth. And the reason why gross margins are important are if you're in a space where your compute costs are so high that it's going to eat into your gross margins, or you have a human in the loop approach where you end up paying so much to the human resources that your net take rate on the revenues are going to be lower. There are going to be skepticism or critical questions around those points. So it's something that we definitely ask companies to be mindful of, especially as they're building AI technologies.
Yeah, and maybe to add, Cyriac, on that kind of questions, what do you think are important criteria for investing in AI companies?
Well, I think one of the things that is concerning me is when companies are talking about a data moat and they're saying we have exclusive access to data. That is a short-term advantage, which I think is not the future of AI. It's basically creating more silos. We need fewer silos. We need more data exchange in order to drive the industry forward. So the natural tendency to try to hog on a data source and say we have that exclusively, that might give you a short-term advantage, but it's certainly not something that I would build a company around, especially because it's not good for the whole ecosystem either, to be trying to lock up data for other people. Instead, I think the right way to build a company, I think, is to create a concept where the more interactions with patients or with users you have, the more valuable the whole thing gets. Create networking effects on the downstream side, which then leads to the flywheel that Samir is talking about, where the whole thing spins itself and actually generates more data rather than exclusive access to certain data. For example, in healthcare, where people are trying to lock up the access to certain images that have been taken in cancer research, for example. I think the other thing that's important is to really think about the complementary teams that are covering the entire value chain, because you need the brilliant computer scientist for the algorithm side, but you also need the person who's really good at signing up partnerships, and then you also need the person who can build up the teams and be a good recruiter, because ultimately the only thing you have is your team and the intelligence that you have sitting inside you, and the drive that you have inside your building, and the culture. So those factors, I think, are most important. And then lastly, I would say, the one point I wanted to make, listening to the conversation, I'm not sure I would even call them AI companies to begin with. They are using AI to solve a problem. And which problem they solve is more important to me than which technology they solve. Like, what is it that we're trying to accomplish here? We're trying to solve a problem on drug discovery. We're trying to solve a problem on image recognition. But for which purpose are we recognizing the image? Is it for identification of terrorists? Is it for pattern recognition in healthcare? Is it for the understanding of consumer preferences in advertising or in e-commerce? So it starts with the problem, and the AI to me is just one solution. There are many other ways of doing it. AI happens to be one of the most important tools that we can use in order to identify patterns that humans can never find. But it should never start with the idea of let me find an AI company. I find that to be quite dangerous. I'd rather like to find a company that solves a problem and happens to be using AI because they found a really cool way of employing that technology to solve that problem.
Yeah, good discussion, and we probably can go on with that. I think we can all agree it's the rule-based approach, what we used to do on software development, that just has its limits. And that is where machine learning, actually with predictions, can do much more. And I think that, and of course, and I also agree, it's about solving a problem, and providing then a solution with a value to customers. As I see that our time is kind of progressing, and I had a couple of more questions on the table, I would like to more open it up to all of you. I think what's interesting is for sure also getting your view of the differences, what you see in Europe or in Germany and Valley. And every one of you has something to say there. I know we have a lot of AI companies also in the audience from Europe. So where do you see big differences? What would be your advice to those European companies, AI companies, to do? And actually looking here in the round, who wants to answer first?
I'm happy to go first. So, so as we look at our investments in Germany specifically, what do we see as common trends in founders? Very, very meticulous on spend, on kind of disciplined growth in terms of deploying capital to grow. Humility is also a very common theme, and sometimes to a fault. And my advice is, as I look at companies in Germany or Silicon Valley, really think about the scale of the ambition, because that's really the kind of the seed for what will create a bigger flywheel. If you have entrepreneurs and VCs that aim for ambitious exits larger than what we're seeing today, and if those exits materialize, well, then that will feed back into more money going into German startups, VCs raising larger funds, and maybe closing the gap between what we're seeing in Silicon Valley and Germany. I think the points that Thomas made about on a per capita basis, what you're seeing in Germany versus what you're seeing in the US versus Israel, I mean, that really speaks to there is a lot of untapped potential in the German market. So, advice there is have larger ambition. And I'll give you one example, very personal example. Wandelbot CEO Christian. You really think about him as the best of Silicon Valley and the best of Germany in terms of the grit, the ability to evangelize, to paint that big picture, whether he's talking to customers, whether he's recruiting, or he's getting VCs excited about his company. I would like to see more entrepreneurs in Germany that are able to, evangelize and build excitement for their startup the way Christian does, but still backed up by very deep technical capability, having the right academic foundation if you're doing a robotic startup. So it's not just, hype or vaporware, but having those soft skills to really build excitement for your company. So that's one. The other thing that I wonder about, and maybe I don't know, but just an observation, if you look in Silicon Valley, the co-location of an institution like Stanford, Sand Hill Road, and then startups around that, you have a great technical university whether it's Stanford or Berkeley, but Stanford really kind of the poster child of infusing entrepreneurship into students very early, kind of building that bridge between investors, entrepreneurs coming back and sharing their journeys to inspire students. How do we do more of that in Germany to really catalyze a much earlier development of the entrepreneurial mindset in typically what are very strong academics, but entrepreneurship happens afterwards or as an afterthought when they're well on their way to building a startup? How do we move that earlier and do that, with more interaction with investors, academia, and entrepreneurs earlier in that cycle?
Yeah,
okay, sorry. Yeah, okay. Actually, first, Yvonne, differences and advice.
Yeah, I mean, Samir, I think he summarized it very nicely. When I was back in Germany, I think I had a different perspective being here in US and seeing so many so bullish and so bold entrepreneurs. I realized that many of the German entrepreneurs could need a little bit more of this, and thinking big and being more bullish and being more engaged, I think is a big part of it. And paired with the German humility, I think it's a huge asset. What I was also thinking about, and I don't know whether this is the right advice or not, but I also see that many of the early adopters, corporations, are actually rather in US than in Germany. So my advice also for German entrepreneurs would be consider either opening subsidiary or actually moving the whole company to US. It's kind of sad because we want to, on the other hand, we also want to foster the German ecosystem, but it's so much easier to start a company in US. I mean, you can do a Delaware company, online in a couple of hours, and in Germany, it takes you, I don't know, months to start your own GmbH. So, I mean, I have to admit, I have to say, come to US, start your company here, look for funding in US, and also look for early adopters of your technology. This can really boost you forward.
Yeah. Be bullish, go international, go US. I understand. Cyriac, what do you want to add?
So I did my first startup in Germany, and right now I'm about 3 miles from Stanford, here in Portola Valley in California. And last week I was actually in Germany for the first time after 2 years, and I went to the AI campus in Berlin and met really exciting founders there that are working on the next generation of technology in Germany. So, I can mirror some of these comments about thinking bold and big. I think that actually this goes both ways. This goes towards the founders, but also towards the investors. I have a serious concern about German investors, and that is that they're trying to get a good deal, trying to get a good valuation. In their perspective, that means low valuation, and get it sort of relatively cheap compared to international deals. I'm very concerned about that for 2 reasons. One is that simply means that the best talent won't go into venture because there's not enough return on investment to be had, which is essentially shooting themselves in the foot over the long run. And then secondly, this is not a sustainable model to begin with, because fortunately we live in a global competitive market, and the American investors have now understood that there's an arbitrage effect to be made by going to Germany because valuations are lower. And here they are. Sequoia has just set up shop in London, and where Sequoia Capital doesn't go to a new location to tap its toe into the water a little bit. They are the only VC that have made it possible to have global leadership in the United States, in China, and in India, where they are running the show in both of these 3 markets. In all of these 3 markets, they're the only VC that has made that possible. And now, guess what? Now they're setting up shop in Europe. And they didn't set up shop in Berlin, they set up shop in London after Brexit, which is sort of interesting. Could be despite or even perhaps because of it. So now that we have Sequoia entering the European market, valuations are going significantly up. It's not just Sequoia, it's other investors as well. And if the German investors, the traditional investors, are not on their toes, they might watch themselves being kicked out of the market, out of the really interesting deals, now that the unicorns and even decacorns are starting to be possible in Europe. So last point about, I think what Yvonne said is, I think, very true about the US market being a very attractive market for startups. I think one of the things that European and German entrepreneurs should really consider is, rather than after Germany, once they've set up shop and created their proof of concept that things work, oftentimes they think about, now I'm going to go to the UK and to France and set up my first international expansion there. Well, that actually means you're setting up two new companies, because it's two new cultures, very different ecosystems, different clients. I would recommend you go to the largest markets right after Germany, and that's the United States and China. So those are 2 points that I think are important from both the entrepreneur side as well as from the investor side.
Thank you, Sirak. And actually, I'm seeing we're coming to the end of this session, but there's more, because we have a networking session where we actually want to open it up and have more kind of connecting. All the speakers will be in the following session. We are now on a webinar, so there's a new link. You can also all join, where we will open up it more to the audience. And if we see that too many are too active, we even do breakout rooms. So let's see how that's going on. So at this point, here officially on the panel, thank you very much for joining. I saw way too less time. But we also know the attention span is in this digital world kind of reduced to 1 hour. So next time we probably need to talk twice as fast. But thanks for joining. Thanks being part of this, and see you all in the next session. And to Thomas also, thank you very much. And of course, there are more Transatlantic AI Exchange seminars coming, and so we'll see you there again. But let's rejoin again on the next session. And I would ask someone, because I don't see it now, to get the session link, which is somewhere in the chat, where we actually have a lot of stuff, and all of that will saved. And if there's something interesting, we will also distribute it afterwards. And this session also is recorded and will be made available for viewing, for later viewing too. Thomas, you want to finish with something, or?
No, I was just pointing out Oliver has shared the link multiple times. So just get out of here, click on the link, and then see you on the other side.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And see you on the other side. And have a great day and evening.